Karma and Rebirth was first published in 1943, at a time when the Second World War was at its height. The doctrine, known to the East from time immemorial, was new to the West, and the effect of its acceptance on those grieving for their loved ones was immense. The news of someone's death, from a wound of cold finality, was seen as only the premature happening of an event which is periodic for us all. If love is indeed the fulfilling of the law, the force of these twin aspects of the nameless Absolute, which the Buddha called the unborn, will surely, in a life as yet to come, heal the apparent severance. But today it seems that the twin doctrine is helping an ever-widening public to drop the fear of death, to see that justice rules the world and all within it, and that we are indeed, in the smallest detail, at least potential masters of our destiny.
There are many books on the twin doctrines of karma and rebirth, but the tendency of each new publication is to present the subject as more and more mechanical, until so nearly does this timeless universal law approximate to a soulless fate that what is in fact a reign of law becomes a reign of terror and compassion, described in the voice of the silence as the law of laws, eternal harmony, is utterly ignored. The cause of this degradation is probably twofold. First, the general tendency of Western thought to materialize whatever spiritual principles swim into its ken, and secondly, the increasing departure from the available sources of our knowledge of the doctrine, with the corresponding reliance of each writer on previous textbooks and his own ideas. In the result, most Western writers on the subject confine themselves to the lower knowledge described by the Vedanta philosophers, which is sufficient for those too lazy to awaken in themselves the higher centers from which alone that higher knowledge may be seen. But though the law of karma must, on its own plane, remain to us unknowable, a thoughtful study of the sources from which our knowledge is derived will give the genuine student a vision of essential principles which, if not yet of the higher knowledge reserved for the few, may serve to awaken the higher centers through which, as windows onto the Absolute, the truth may finally be known. The present volume is therefore a humble attempt to reconsider the subject in the light of such authorities as are available and from a more spiritual and therefore less mechanical point of view. The doctrine is too old and too widely held to be regarded as the property of any one religion, but the scriptures of the Hindus and Buddhists provide the oldest available sources. When to these are added, by way of commentary, the writings of H.P. Blavatsky, who was herself trained in Tibetan monasteries, there is available a triple authority which, taken as a whole, provides the basis for an all-embracing law which guides and governs the evolution of mankind. Yet the ultimate authority for any doctrine is not in the written nor in the spoken word, but rather in its own sweet reasonableness and in the fact that it is ratified by the intuition and seems to work out in the day's experience. Neither God nor man may prove to another that a principle is true. As the Buddha said to the Kalamas, do not go by hearsay, nor by what is handed down by others, nor by what people say, nor by what is stated on the authority of your traditional teachings, but, Kalamas, when you know of yourselves, these teachings are good, these teachings, when followed out and put into practice, conduce to the ending of suffering, to peace of mind, to nirvana, then accept them. In accordance with this view of authority, no authority is claimed for the views of the writers quoted in this essay, and therefore no exact references have been given. Where, however, another's words express my meaning better or more cogently than my own, I have adopted them for the reader's benefit. For the rest, there is no authority for any man save the still small voice within. It is an axiom, approved by all experience, that the more spiritual a doctrine the more is it immediately applicable in daily life, and in presenting karma and rebirth against their spiritual background, they will be found to be of more immediate application than when regarded as a mere mechanical debit and credit account in the ledgers of some extra-cosmic god. I therefore write in no sense as a scholar, nor as one presenting an interesting belief of the Orient. Rather, I write as one who believes the doctrine to be true, and believes that any reconstruction of Western civilization is doomed to failure unless it is based on conscious cooperation with this ultimate and all-embracing law. As Loftus Hare wrote, a man becomes what he does. Can this doctrine be refuted? If it is true, it is the most important and the most neglected truth in the world. One might add that if it be false, it is strange that none has yet attempted to prove its falsity, nor offered a better solution of the riddle of life. But because it is true, the doctrine is intensely difficult. Those who imagine that the fundamental truths of existence can be described on the plane of the intellect have yet to discover that these tremendous principles are not facts, as pebbles on the beach are facts, but cosmic forces compared with which the power and grandeur of the Niagara Falls are insignificant. In the Brihadupanishad, one of the oldest Hindu scriptures, karma is referred to as the mighty secret, which only the initiated may know. In the Sutta Nipata, one of the oldest Buddhist scriptures, Ananda says of karma to the Blessed One, "How deep is this causal law, and how deep it seems. And yet do I regard it as quite plain to understanding." To which the Buddha replied, "Say not so, Ananda, say not so. Deep indeed is this causal law, and deep it appears to be. It is by not knowing, by not understanding, by not penetrating this doctrine that the world of men has become entangled like a ball of twine, unable to pass beyond the way of woe, and the ceaseless round of rebirth. Even to our intelligence the ramifications and interrelations of cause and effect in all the departments of the universe are so immensely complex that none would presume to understand them. How infinitely more enlightened must that being be whose understanding can embrace this law at the fountain-head of its eternal majesty? Only by studying, and to some extent grasping, an outline of the wisdom of which karma and rebirth are part can the meanest vision of the doctrine be attained, and even then it is difficult to examine it apart from the wisdom itself, from which, as sunlight in the air, it is inseparable. Yet the difficulty is largely of our own making. For centuries the Western mind has been building up an utterly false notion of a separate I, and it is hard for us to grasp a view of existence in which the separative self is viewed as an illusion and the father of all suffering. It follows, whether or not the idea be pleasing to the scholar mind, that only he who treads the way which leads to the end of separative selfhood will attain to understanding of the wisdom wherein self, as something separate, can have no abiding place. Study, deep study, quiet meditation on the living principles revealed in that study, and a constant, self-regardless application of those principles to daily life, these alone will provide the final proof of the laws of karma and rebirth, and only he who knows them thus will be in a position to offer to the West, by the written and the spoken word and by the force of character, the wisdom of which the West has so abundant and so urgent need. Ch. The word karma, or in its neuter form, karman, in Pali, comma, is a Sanskrit word from the root kri, meaning to do or to make. Karma is therefore doing or making, but in the course of time the word has been applied to what Lessing has described as the oldest doctrine in the world. It may be viewed exoterically, from the material point of view, in which case it is merely the law of causation, the balance of cause and effect, the fact known in every science laboratory that action and reaction are equal and opposite. Esoterically, from the spiritual point of view, karma is the law of moral retribution, whereby not only does every cause have an effect, but he who puts the cause in action suffers the effect. Professor Radhakrishnan has called it the law of the conservation of moral energy. It is magnificently described in the 8th book of the Light of Asia, one stanza of which must here suffice.
That which you sow you reap. See yonder fields. The sesamum was sesamum, the corn was corn. The silence and the darkness knew. So is a man's fate born.
This law of merit and demerit, karma in the sense of the reign of moral law, is neither particularly Hindu, Buddhist nor theosophical. It is fundamental in all Oriental philosophy, and was preached by St. Paul. Brethren, be not deceived. God is not mocked, for whatsoever a man soweth that shall he also reap. For the first few centuries of Christianity it remained a cardinal belief in the West. But at the Council of Constantinople, in AD 551, the Christian fathers, finding the doctrine of rebirth incompatible with the curious system of thought which they were in the process of creating, decided that belief in rebirth should be henceforth anathema, and with this doctrine went that which makes it necessary of acceptance, karma. Now, under the double influence of English translations of the Hindu and Buddhist scriptures, and the reproclaiming by Mme Blavatsky of the ancient wisdom, or theosophy, of which all religions are part, karma and rebirth have returned to the West, and a glance at chapter 7 of this book will show to what a wide extent the dual doctrine has proved acceptable. Either it is true or false. The universe is either cosmos or chaos, for it cannot be partly ruled by law and partly by a blind, unreasonable chance. Karma is not a law of which it can be said, there may be something in it. Either the law exists or it does not. If it exists, he is a fool who does not use it, and he alone is wise who studies it, proclaims it far and wide, and applies it to the smallest detail of his daily life. If it be not true, it is a strangely venerable error, and seeing that it has been taught as the basis of the world's accumulated wisdom since, it would seem, the search for truth began, it is strange that no other law has been propounded to explain this life's phenomena. But the law is only understandable from the spiritual point of view. To regard it as a mechanical law of debit and credit for good and evil actions is to rob the doctrine of its living power. If it is all-embracing, coeval with the universe, it can only be grasped from a universal, that is to say, a spiritual point of view. Man has many levels of cognition, windows on the spiral staircase of his understanding, and even as the lighthouse keeper, whose tower is based in the living rock, climbs to the level of the lantern where he tends the light which is not his light, so man's evolving consciousness must climb from plane to plane until he finds, and learns to tend, the light within, which shines eternally. Beyond the intellect, which is the machinery of thought, is the plane of the intuition, the faculty of immediate, direct cognition of reality. In most of us it sleeps, or functions dimly in a low reflection as the instincts, or on the psychic plane. Yet all may develop it, and none may know the law who has not to some extent acquired it as an active instrument. At first it serves to illumine the intellect with fitful flashes of understanding, later, the ascending consciousness begins to use it on its own plane, and he who has experienced such dazzling glimpses of the heart of things will know, and know beyond all doubting, that the law is true. Meanwhile, on the level of the intellect, where doubts arise and cloud the understanding, the law can only be viewed as a doctrine of sweet reasonableness which, in the workshops of experience, is tested and found true. Karma is a law which dominates all other natural laws, from gravity to the law of averages, but it is not blind law. It is living and intelligent as all else in the universe. There is no such thing as either dead or blind matter, as there is no blind or unconscious law, for the universe is worked and guided from within outwards. As above so it is below, as in heaven so on earth, and man, the microcosm and miniature copy of the macrocosm, is the living witness to this universal law, and to the mode of its action. From this it must be obvious that in order to understand karma it is necessary to have some knowledge of the wisdom of which it is the basic law. Only then will it be seen as a necessary part of the cosmic whole, and the place of man, the lawgiver who is yet subject to the law, made clear. This wisdom religion, older than any known religion, will be found to be based upon three fundamental principles. These are necessarily difficult to describe, first because they speak of things which lie beyond the range of our limited intelligence, secondly because any description involves the use of words and names, and both are widely different in the various descriptions of the principles, and thirdly because any attempt to define and describe such cosmic laws is like picking up a handful of a rushing stream or attempting to pigeonhole the tide. The ultimate principle, which all the capital letters in the alphabet can never describe, is the Parabrahman of the Hindus, the Adi-Buddha of the Mahayana Buddhists, the Fana-Alfana of the Sufis, and the Tao, in its highest sense, of the Taoists. It is, in the words of the secret doctrine, an omnipresent, eternal, boundless and immutable principle, on which all speculation is impossible, since it transcends the power of human conception and can only be dwarfed by any human expression or similitude. It is beyond the range and reach of thought. It is, as the writer later says, beingness rather than being, and many prefer to consider it as the ultimate namelessness. It is important to note further that its impersonality is the fundamental conception of the system, and that it is therefore utterly beyond the limited and limiting belief in a personal God. It is latent in every atom of the universe, and is the universe itself. But beingness, to be recognizable to itself, must manifest, and the manifested universe is the field of becoming whereon the one unrolls into the many and returns again. This periodic rolling and unrolling, as the Buddhist scriptures call it, occupies immense though not, it is said, incalculable periods of time. It demonstrates the universality of that law of periodicity, of flux and reflux, ebb and flow, which physical science has observed and recorded in all departments of nature, and which is contained in the Buddhist doctrine of anicca, ceaseless change. The universe when manifest is but of relative reality, or maya, yet deep in the heart of each of the many is a fragment or ray of the one, and each human mind is an aspect or ray of the universal mind, the essence of mind of the Sutra of Wei Lang, which is the appearance of the namelessness. Within this field of becoming the one has become two. But no two things are cognizable without relationship, and with this relationship the two become three. In the Buddhist scriptures this cycle is still further analyzed into the 12 nidanas, which Mme Blavatsky describes as a detailed expression of the law of karma under 12 aspects. The subject is more fully treated in Mme David Neal's Buddhism, its doctrines and methods, and in What is Buddhism, too, and need not be elaborated here. These 12 spokes of the wheel of causation, however, do throw light on the process of involution and evolution, according as they are read forwards or in inverse order, and are essential for those who desire to study the rolling and unrolling of the universe. It is important to note that the spokes are not merely causal, i.e. directly sequential the one from the other, but form an elaborate interrelation of causal factors on all planes. The first is Jara-Marana, old age and death, for life is cradled in death. Every atom, as soon as it is born, begins to die. Old age and death is therefore caused by jati, birth. The cause of death is birth. Birth is caused by bhava, becoming, which is the karmic agent of rebirth, and bhava is caused by upadana, fierce attachment to life and the things of life which man, in his ignorance, foolishly believes will quench his thirst, or tanha, Sanskrit, trishna, the desire for sentient existence. This thirst or desire is caused by vedana, feelings, which is in turn produced by phassa, contact, the connecting link between the organs of sense and the objects they cognize. Contact comes through the six senses, sparsha, being the usual five and the lower mind, and these arise from nama-rupa, literally name and form. The cause of nama-rupa is vijnana, consciousness which, needing a vehicle for self-expression, creates for itself a meaning and form through which it manifests. Consciousness in turn is the outcome of the sankharas, about which volumes might be written, for these compounds of thoughts, belief, ideals and prejudices together form the germs of propensities and impulses from previous births to be developed in this, and as such are an aspect of karma itself. But karma in this sense is the product of avidya, ignorance, the dark illusion which is the womb of suffering and the basis of causation and its endless progeny of cause-effects. What, then, is the place of man in this mighty scheme of things? Man is a complex entity, and whether he be regarded as the spirit, soul and body of St. Paul, or as the more complex analysis of Indian philosophy, which ignores both the physical body and the spirit and yet leaves 5 other planes of consciousness, or whether the number be carried to 7, as set out in the ancient wisdom itself, is a matter of terminology and choice. For the purpose of this account of karma and rebirth, the Pauline analysis will suffice. Man is spirit, that is to say, he is of the very essence of that beingness which is beyond the range and reach of thought, and the various garments which he wears are the vehicles or instruments through which he contacts the descending planes of consciousness. These bodies or instruments are all made of matter, but of matter which at the highest is so fine as to be all but non-existent, and at the lowest is of our common clay. All are like anatta, that is to say, lacking a permanent life as such, and all are anicca, subject to change. They change with every act at any level of consciousness, for every new cause must modify to some extent the sum total of effects which is that vehicle. It follows that the ultimate heresy, the profoundest error in all human belief, is attavada, the belief in the essential separateness of any of these vehicles, be it mind or soul or spirit itself, from the namelessness or infinite self of which all manifestation is part. This fundamental principle, the very basis for the solidarity and hence the brotherhood of man, must be thoroughly grasped and assimilated before the law of karma can be in any way understood.
We must not lose sight of the fact that every atom is subject to the general law governing the whole body to which it belongs. The aggregate of individual karma becomes that of the nation to which those individuals belong, and the sum total of national karma is that of the world. The evils that a man suffers are not peculiar to the individual or even to the nation, they are more or less universal, and it is upon this broad line of human interdependence that the law of karma finds its legitimate and equable issue. The Key to Theosophy, H.P. Blavatsky. From this the writer proceeds to one of the finest passages in all her writings. It is an occult law, moreover, that no man can rise superior to his individual failings without lifting, be it ever so little, the whole body of which he is an integral part. In the same way no one can sin, nor suffer the effects of sin, alone. In reality, there is no such thing as separateness, and the nearest approach to that selfish state which the laws of life permit is in the intent or motive. But if no man's spirit is separate, in that being one with the namelessness it is not even his, the soul is even less immortal, for it is changing every moment of the day. It is, as will be explained later, equivalent to character, the collection of attributes, good and bad,
which make up the man still more impermanent is that body, using the word in the sense of the mask or personality through which the soul, and through the soul the spirit, is made manifest. This outward and visible aspect of the man is the densest of his vehicles, being that through which he contacts the lowest planes of matter. Yet, said the Buddha, in this very body, 6 feet in length, with its sense impressions and its thoughts and ideas, I declare to you are the world, the origin of the world and the ceasing of the world, and likewise the way that leads to the ceasing thereof. Point 1. It follows that he who waits for a heaven world in which to begin his inner development will wait in vain. At page 122 of Dr. Jacobi's Psychology of C.G. Jung, there is a diagram of what that famous psychologist, as the result of a life's work, believes to be the content of the invisible side of man. To equate the analyzed aspects of man as taught by Eastern philosophy with the empirically discovered equivalents in Western psychology is a task which probably only a Dr. Jung could at the moment undertake, but those who meditate upon the respective analyses will learn a vast amount from the comparison. In either case the teaching is insistent on the indivisible wholeness of the thing we know as man. Whether his skins be compared to those of an onion, which may be successively removed, or his consciousness be compared to that of a lighthouse keeper, as in the analogy used above, or the various aspects be built into a glyph or diagram, ever the self and all its vehicles is one, even as karma is one, for both are subject to and aspects of the din-est without name. For the study of karma it is best to consider the man at the level of his individuality or soul. Here the self creates, uses, suffers, and in a very real sense is its karma, and those who study Jung's diagram will note with interest that this self unites the most outward and most inward, most material and most spiritual parts of the whole. For the keynote of the law of karma is equilibrium, and nature is always working to restore that equilibrium whenever through man's acts it is disturbed. As Emerson wrote, "If you love and serve men, you cannot by any hiding or stratagem escape the remuneration." The Anguttara Nikaya. Secret retributions are always restoring the level, when disturbed, of divine justice. It is impossible to tilt the beam. All the tyrants and proprietors and monopolists of the world in vain set their shoulders to heave the bar. Settles forevermore the ponderous equator to its line, and man and mote, and star and sun must range to it, or be pulverized by the recoil. A Buddhist Catechism? To the same effect wrote H.P. Blavatsky. The only decree of karma, an eternal and immutable decree, is absolute harmony in the world of matter as in the world of spirit. It is not, therefore, karma that rewards or punishes, but it is we who reward and punish ourselves, according as we work with and through nature, abiding by the laws on which that harmony depends, or breaking them. Isis Unveiled, H.P. Blavatsky. And this in turn was echoed by W. Q. Judge, her pupil, when he wrote, in his famous karmic aphorisms, "Karma is an undeviating and unerring tendency in the universe to restore equilibrium, and it operates incessantly. Because this ceaseless effort to adjust a troubled harmony takes time, the doctrine of rebirth is a necessary corollary of karma. For the longest life on earth will not suffice to restore the harmony disturbed by a daily round of self-regarding actions. Life after life must pass before the ultimate lesson is learned, and the triple fires of hatred, lust and illusion die for want of fueling. Karma is the master law of the universe, but there is no lawgiver. Its ultimate cause, as the ultimate cause of anything, is of course unknown and to our intelligence unknowable, but it is certainly not God, as the Church which claims the name of Christianity conceives that term. Absolute consciousness, or Adibuddha, however one may name the namelessness, is as far beyond the conception of a personal God as the sea is greater than a stream. The anthropomorphic God is only, as Colonel Alcott wrote, a gigantic shadow thrown upon the void of space by the imagination of ignorant men, for even as the Tao that can be talked about is not the eternal Tao, square. A man can have no God that is not bounded by his own human conceptions. The wider the sweep of his spiritual vision, the mightier will be his deity. But where can we find a better demonstration of him than in man himself, in the spiritual and divine powers lying dormant in every human being? The law is all-embracing. As is said in one of the most famous passages in the Dhammapada, not in the sky, not in the midst of the sea, not if we enter into the clefts of the mountains, is there known a spot in the whole world where a man may be freed from an evil deed. None is above the law save he who has attained, by his use of the law, supreme enlightenment, and then only because, with the dissolution of the self which caused the law to be set in motion, there is no longer an object on which the law can operate. The law is timeless, therefore, in that it will last for as long as there remains a single being in whom it can and must inhere. Its patience is inexhaustible. Times are as naught, tomorrow it will judge, or after many days. Such is the law, and it is the basis of all truth. As Paracelsus wrote, philosophy is only the true perception and understanding of cause and effect.